This flower does not have a name. Nobody has ever named one because nobody has ever seen one because it did not exist 1,000 years ago. Its parent species came from Madagascar and Brazil. They had been separated by an ocean for 40 million years, and then we put them on the same street. This is Miami, 1,000 years after the last person left it, and almost nothing growing here has a name. We spent 3 centuries collecting plants from every continent on Earth and putting them all in one warm, wet place, side by side. The only thing keeping them apart was us, walking around with tools, deciding what was allowed to grow where. We stopped. They did not. And 1,000 years is a very long time in a place this warm and this wet. Start with the air, because it is the first thing you would notice, and it is not what most people expect. The oxygen barely changed. It sat at about 21% before we arrived, and it sits at about 21% now. That number was never really the problem. Everything mixed into it alongside the oxygen was the problem, and all of that is gone. No exhaust, no particulates, no nitrogen dioxide, no ozone at ground level, nothing suspended in it at all except water and pollen. You can see about 40 miles from the top of these ruins on an average day. When people lived here, 12 was a good day. And at night, for the first time in 1,000 years, you can see straight out of the atmosphere from ground level. It is also extraordinarily loud here. With no engines anywhere, a single bird call carries about 4 miles across open water. The plants moved first and fastest because plants do something animals mostly cannot. They interbreed across enormous genetic distances. 2 species that could never have met produce something that is neither of them, and occasionally that something is better than both. There is a tree growing across this whole basin that did not exist when we were here. It is roughly half fig and half something else. It grows straight through buildings rather than around them. Roots go in at the top, come out at the bottom, and hold the ruin upright. Down at ground level, there are ferns here with fronds 4 meters long, and they only grow where concrete used to be. Something in the lime and old concrete suits them, so they follow the streets. From above, you can still read the road grid and ferns. There is a flowering vine here that only opens after dark, and it glows. Faintly but genuinely with its own light. It borrowed the trick from fungus. That happens more often than people used to think, and it happens fastest where things are crowded. Nothing here is native. That word stopped meaning anything about 800 years ago. Everything here is simply from here now. New plants mean new insects, and insects change far faster than anything else because they get through a generation in weeks. There is a moth in these ruins with a wingspan wider than your hand, and it feeds from exactly one flower and nothing else. The flower did not exist 1,000 years ago either. They built each other one generation at a time until neither works without the other. Down in the flooded lower floors, there are mosquitoes that can no longer breed with the ones outside. That makes them a separate species. That is not speculation. It already happened once in a tunnel system under a city, in under 200 years while we were still watching. There are ants in this basin that farm a fungus that grows only on one hybrid tree. All 3 of those things are new. And there is something here eating the things we made, which is the strangest development of all. Bacteria that digest plastic already existed before we left. In 1,000 years, they got very good at it, and something started eating them. Everything we ever manufactured is now somewhere in a food chain. It just took a while for something to work out how. Animals change more slowly, but 1,000 years is enough to see it starting, especially in the small ones. The lizards here are the descendants of pets. Somebody's escaped animals from 4 different continents, all released into the same swamp. They have sorted themselves into layers: ground, trunk, low branch, canopy. Each layer produced a different shape of animal. The parrots did something stranger. They got bigger, they got louder, and they started using the ruins the way seabirds use cliffs. There are around 90,000 of them in this basin now, and they are the loudest thing on this entire coastline. Out in the flooded districts, the water is warm, shallow, and clear, and the reef came inland to take advantage of it. There is coral growing on the 11th floor of a building, because the water is now 11 floors deep in that district. Manatees graze the seagrass growing on what used to be a runway, and the whole runway is now a meadow underwater. Here is the part worth sitting with. Almost nothing we built survived, but almost everything we moved did. The buildings are gone or going, the roads are gone, but every seed, spore, egg, and animal we carried across an ocean is still here. That is our actual legacy, not the concrete. We spent 300 years shuffling life around the planet, and that part stuck. Every one of those species then met every other one and started making things nobody had ever planned or predicted. Biologists had a name for this before we left. They called it a new evolutionary radiation, and they thought it took millions of years. It has taken 1,000, and it is not finished. It has barely started. In another 10,000 years, none of this will be recognizable. We did not damage this planet permanently. We rearranged it, and then we left it running, and it kept going without us. The air here is cleaner than any human being ever breathed, including everyone who lived before there were cities at all. The water is clear to the seabed. The reefs are expanding. There is more living matter in this basin than at any point in its history. And none of it is a recovery. Recovery means going back to how something was. Nothing here is going back to anything. This is somewhere new. It is built out of pieces we carried here, assembled in an order we never intended, in a shape we never imagined. Nobody will ever name that flower. Nobody will catalog the moth. There is no longer anyone here whose job that would be.